Hey, we are live and it's not quite 5. Just change that. Instead of live at 5, it's live at not quite 5. I was a
Five
bit
o'clock.
premature there, James.
Yeah, it's five
Sorry?
o'clock. How are you doing, Maria?
I'm excited. This is the last one, our last This Week in Events until 2021.
Who would have thought we would have got this far in it? They
I
wouldn't have taken
know.
air.
Yeah, we haven't fallen out, which is amazing, have we? It's brilliant. There's not been any fighting. So anyway, yes, I'm good, thank you. I'm not ready for Christmas. I haven't written a single card. It's really bad. I did record a silly Christmas video. Did you see that, by the way?
I did. Is fantastic. It's yes, yes. It's very. We can't share it, but yes. So,
No, you definitely don't want to share it. And yes, so I spent my time doing that instead of writing cards. So I now need to write my cards. What about you? Are you ready for Christmas?
no, we did get our vegan cheese from our vegan fromagerie just arrived, so that kind of gets me in the Christmas mood. Like food, I always think that food and chilling out, slowing the pace as we get into Christmas. So I'm quite excited about having some time off, and lots of books arriving. So that's my guilty pleasure. There's lots of reading over the
Oh,
holidays.
love books, love books. So I never would have connected vegan food to Christmas for me, but hey, listen, each to their own, each to their own. So what have we got planned today?
Well, we have a very interesting guest. First time I think we've actually had a guest on that's been in the same studio as me when we've been filming, so this is new for us. But before I invite her, the other things that we're going to be talking about is our kind of highlights and lowlights of 2020, maybe what we're looking forward to in 2021. And then we're going to be talking about our tools of the week. So we've got a pretty packed final show of 2020 for you. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Now, we're socially distanced. I don't have to do the social distancing here because she's in the studio with me, but I'd like to invite our guest today, Alison Burns, who is an ethical futurist, and she's going to be talking us about the impact of ethics and the role of impacts on professional speaking. So let me just, by the powers of technology, there we have it.
Da-da, 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 da-da. And you're not socially distanced, but it's okay, isn't it? There's a reason
We're in a
why. Are we
bubble.
going to share?
We have a
You're in a
bubble.
bubble. You have a bubble. Fantastic. So listen, first of all, welcome, Alison. How lovely to have you on our last show of 2020. What an honour to have you. So tell me a little bit about your background, because you are an ethical futurist. Where does that come from? Where did you decide that this was your path?
Well, it's an interesting journey I've had. I started off as an engineer, then a lawyer and a jazz singer. And my burning desire is obviously to be a plumber, but that's another question. But I've always had this ingrained thing inside me, which has always been striving for justice and fairness. And when I went into law, I decided, we do legal ethics when we study that, and also as a practitioner, as a solicitor, that's obviously high up there with guidance and rules. But medicine has ethics, and government have ethics as well. Well, hopefully. And also in business, because I've also built my own business. So it's how you conduct yourself in business and also conduct yourself personally, and how to make those better choices when faced with ethical questions. So, and we're all faced with ethical questions on a daily basis. So it's whether you recognise it at the time or not, but we make choices daily, and it's whether we make the right choices in the day when we're faced with these challenges.
Super. James, I'm sure you've got a question to follow up on that.
You actually. So, okay, ethics. Sounds like quite a heavy topic, heavy subject. So let's think about how does it really relate to speakers? Give me an example of an ethical question that a speaker, as a speaker, and we're going to actually make this interactive here. So if you're watching this just now, if you're watching this live, we want you to participate in this. So let's ask our viewers just now an ethical question for them to ponder as speakers.
Okay, here's a little bit of a quiz for you. So you're a speaker and you've been offered the dream job. Now, this job involves double your normal fee, first class flights to the destination, and an extended stay in a super duper luxury hotel. However, the question is, do you take the gig on the basis that the client is well known in their business dealings with connections to human rights abuses. So, do you take the gig? Do you take the gig?
Mm.
Do you take the gig,
Okay.
James?
Wow. So, what does everyone think? If you're watching this live just now, what's your take? Because Maria, you must have come up against this one when a client has come to you, asked you, and you've researched the client. There's maybe some concerns there, and how do you talk to your speakers about it when you relate this to your speakers that you represent?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I do have speakers who choose not to work for certain types of organization. I've got speakers who won't work for gaming companies, won't work for tobacco companies, won't work for, they've got certain, criteria that they won't cross. And I absolutely respect that. It's very difficult as a bureau because you try to be objective and also you try to educate the audience a bit, I think. And you want to try and change them. So nobody's daring to put their hand up and say whether they would go or not. Obviously, we're imagining that this is outside of COVID because we've talked about first-class flights somewhere really nice. James, would you do it?
Well, I've had not exactly like this. I've had similar ones where maybe it's a technology company, and I know that company's technology has been used, especially around cybersecurity and surveillance. And sometimes I've actually said no, frankly, because I know enough about the technology that I know it's being used in an offensive way, not a defensive. It's very different if it's being used as defensive tech. And a more typical one is, like, for example, last year I got asked to go and do an event for McDonald's, and I'm a vegan.
Yeah.
So this is would a vegan do a keynote speech and an event for McDonald's? And I thought about it, and I actually had to stop and reflect about it. And in my case, I decided to do that because I could see where McDonald's was going. They were starting to do Beyond Burgers, and so it was on a path. And I thought if there was some way that I could open their minds up to new ways to innovate, to be more creative, to be more sustainable, then maybe that's something that's useful. So So are we getting any comments?
Yeah.
We have. Greg's made a comment there. He's asking to help differentiate ethical from difference of opinions about sensitive topics. That's a very good question.
Well, sensitive issues with different topics. I suppose you've got to look at the context. For example, within the context of this quiz, there may not be a right answer because there's always an opportunity there. But what you have to do is dig a little bit deeper to find those ethical challenges. And it's also got to align with your values, and what your sense of right and wrong is. And if you have that, I call it the ethical alarm bell. If that's ringing, then that's a good thing because you're asking questions. And also, like you said, there's an opportunity there to change minds, to change opinions, to kind of put some extra views in there that maybe people haven't thought about within your audience or the client. But I also see a second challenge as well. So the first challenge is, is it right or wrong for you to do the gig? But the second challenge is if you don't actually hear that ethical alarm bell at all, so it never rings for you. So there's a double-edged thing here, but it's all down to context and what's right. It's doing the right thing. There's a difference between doing what would you do, but also what should you do. So there's a subtle
I guess
difference.
It's a bit like with panels that are all men. It used to be that it wasn't even thought about that was an issue up until relatively recently. And now it's recognized that is an issue. Now, some organizations just choose to continue to do a panel, and other ones are saying, no, we can't do this. This is not appropriate anymore. We need to have that.
That's also a great example of right and wrong, but also right and right, because it's always been seen as right. So it's like but that's why you have to challenge the norms, because just because something's been done a certain way for a long time doesn't necessarily mean it's right. So, or the context and cultures, different kind of circumstances change how people act differently in the same set of circumstances. They will always make different choices. So there's lots of things. So there's no right and wrong answer, but it's how it aligns for you as a speaker.
So
here's a thought.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, James. Carry on.
No, Maria, on you go, because I was about to jump over you there as well. So please.
You love jumping over me. I know. Gosh, if I was in that bubble.
The naughty step once again.
So his question, in this last 8 months or so, or however long, I'm losing track, 9 months, where we've not been able to travel, and we've obviously done a lot of good for our carbon footprint. Do you think that ethically speakers should be reconsidering you gave an example of flying to an exotic place. Should speakers be rethinking that and doing a lot of travel? And should organizations be rethinking taking lots of people to a venue that's abroad so that we don't keep adding to our carbon footprint?
Well, certainly 2020 has changed everything, changed the way that we do business, as speakers. And I think 2021 will carry some of that forward, but also as well, speakers, they're in the business of going to where the client is generally before COVID. And it's work. This is work for them, but it's also an opportunity to change and influence and make a difference in the world. But offsetting carbon, I think, is should be in there on a speaker's radar. For example, I did an event at the start of the year for the University of Dundee. And the first thing they did, as soon as I walked through the door, was they handed me their sustainability statement of their green credentials. And I was totally impressed. I thought, wow, that was totally unprompted. And I thought, do you know what? What if speakers did that?
Yeah.
What if they presented to their clients? Because it would make them think as well. You think, oh, this is interesting. What would be on your statement, James?
Well, actually, Maria, I know on the Speaker Bureau, you have something like that in terms of how you work with clients.
Yeah, so London Speaker Bureau offsets all of their speakers' travel. I think we are now more or less carbon neutral, or will be in 2021. Certainly this year we must have been, because we've gone virtual for sure, but they've been working on it for quite some time. And the speakers get a certificate to say that that's been done. But I'm wondering, should we, rather than offsetting it, should we just try to reduce it? Because there's offsetting and not doing it at all. I don't know. That's a bit of a dilemma, isn't it?
No, I think it's like all these little things. I mean, even a very simple thing. There's one of our Speakers U members, Andrea Edwards, who's a speaker based in Thailand. She's Australian, and she speaks about social media. But I know when she often goes to work for her clients, she asks them, "Please, can you ensure that there are no plastic straws?"
Uh-huh.
Because you go to these events and everyone's got drinks and there's a lot of plastic, a lot of bump and rubbish and bits of paper and stuff like that. She said, is there any way we can just reduce all of that stuff? So just asking those simple little questions, and sometimes it's just because your clients haven't thought about it. It's not something that's been on the radar, and it's your job as a horrible word, influencer, to influence as well.
But also as well, you could lead by your example, because maybe if the client or the organisation haven't thought, just say, oh, well, we see on your list of your credentials, your sustainability credentials, oh, I haven't eaten meat for 30 years, so I've saved so many, and I'm not putting, there's no extra carbon from the food side. And there has been recent statements, I can't remember where the statements came out from, but it's saying people ought to reduce their meat, to help reduce the carbon emissions. So there's lots of things that paint the bigger picture that all add up to, and also as well, it paints an impression of you as a speaker that you're mindful of these bigger world issues that are really important. That's just my...
Fantastic.
What about...
What else do we...
Well, I was just thinking, so as speakers, so there's the travel piece, Maria, as you were saying, and the sustainability or not of that. There is whether you should take certain gigs and work with certain clients or certain industries. What about, let's assume it's ticked all those boxes, you're okay. Maybe it's a virtual presentation you're doing. What should we be thinking in terms of the actual presentation itself, I guess, in the content that we're delivering, making sure that that's ethical, the way that we're doing that?
Well, I'm all for speakers being ethical, obviously in the way that they conduct themselves in business, but also as well in terms of the content and their speeches. So things like not to copy other people's material, and if you're using quotes, to properly attribute those quotes to the people where they originated. So, when are things ever original? So there's originality can be argued, but however, if you could take some ideas and make them your own and put them in your own words, then that's one thing that you ought to be doing. Because I remember walking through a conference floor and my ear was caught by a speaker. And I thought, I've heard that speech before. And I looked around and there was the speech that I'd heard from another speaker and the exact same slides. So I thought, oh, that's rather naughty. But so using your own words and also copyright in there as well. So if you're using images and even music as well. So just to make sure that you're clear on that front. So you're kind of making sure that everyone's covered and you're not taking anyone else's material and not giving them credit for it. And things like the facts that you speak of in your speech. So facts can be dressed up to kind of suit your narrative. So try not to dress up facts, or not dressing up facts at all, but also as well not dressing up your opinions as facts, because that could be misleading. Conflicts of interest. I think this is an interesting one, because if you're being sponsored to give a presentation, then really people ought to know that, because if you're pushing a product or something, then that's really important, I think, to be transparent.
Because sometimes the audience doesn't know that keynote speaker up there is being sponsored by a particular company or a brand. So they have a certain position, a certain view of the world, a certain thing that they're looking to put. And that's not always, sometimes it will say this speaker is sponsored by blah, blah, blah. So you kind of know that. But I know some speakers who do multiple things a year for one particular company, and they're asked to go and speak at these big conferences. And I'm always kind of wondered, like, when you're giving that speech, how, like, the ethics of some of those, and are you just saying this thing because it's true, or are you saying this thing because it's what the client behind you is wanting you to say?
And also there's the rise of the influencer.
Oh, my least favorite.
I know this is well, let's hear your views on that, James.
Gosh, yes, go on. It's that reaction there. That was interesting.
I think this is a trend we're going to see in the industry. I think we've maybe spoken about this before, where we're going to see more public-facing conferences, like Harry Whitbread was talking about the other day, these big, large events where they're going to bring in influencers, people with big Instagram followings. And what a lot of people, the rules are getting better now, but for example, you'll often see a lot of influencers drive a particular brand of car. That's because if you have over 100,000 Instagram followers, you get a discount on buying that particular brand of car. Now, most people don't know that. They just think, oh, this is the car that everyone's driving. But there's a reason behind that. And so when those influencers then go on stage and talk about particular things, there's a little bit of me that's just kind of really, so a little bit questioning, I guess.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know. When we had our London Speaker Bureau conference, we were talking about influencers, and I think it was Alexei was talking about it, who's our head of digital there, and he was actually showing a school where people were being taught, and there's huge groups of them being taught how to be influencers. Have you seen that? And they're taught how to take a photo of themselves, how to stand in front of their phones, and how to light themselves, and what to say, and they're called out in numbers, and they've all got to do it, and they're all exactly the same, and you're thinking, what are these people hoping to influence? It's scary. It's scary when everybody becomes a cookie cutter version of what somebody thinks is the ideal. And actually, what's the ethics around that? In fact, making everybody, a cookie cutter saying the same thing that's coming out of whoever's in charge. I don't know. That's a scary thought.
There's just no originality, and also as well, I think people will get a little bit fed up of that as well, because it's all about that deep. There doesn't seem to be much depth to it, and if they're only just repeating, and is it about likes? Is it about the ethics of social media as well? There's lots of questions that could be raised there, but it's like in business as well, because a lot of businesses are looking to influence in the way that they do business, but in the way that customers see them as well. So I know that they're millennials, any of the millennials who are slightly smarter, they actually want to work for companies. There was a study out, it was 86% of millennials want to work for businesses that align with their values. So, with the influencers, you want to ask, well, what are their values? Where do they sit in amongst the ethical? Do they kind of look at what they're doing and put it through the ethical filter?
So we've spoken about, I guess, speakers doing ethical things, our clients being ethical. Maria, the bureaus. Should I talk about ethical bureau? Alison, from a speaker's standpoint, have you heard of any stories about maybe bureaus not being so ethical?
I actually have. Well, I know this is a true story, but I won't name any names. But there's a bureau who were booking speakers just for exposure, and I have eyes and ears everywhere. So there's I did hear that there were big fees being paid, and the speaker didn't see any of that, although they had their costs, paid and the flights and everything. But there were fees being paid for these speakers to present and give their speeches, but the speaker didn't see any of this. And I think, well, that's all very well if you agree to doing, for the exposure. But I think full transparency is really the ethical way to go. And, and that way, I think that's much more in line with how people should be operating their businesses. And what are your views, Maria?
Do you know, I think we're going to get to that point, absolutely, where there is full transparency. I think that the relationship between the speaker and the bureau has to be much closer, and there has to be great trust there and great respect there. But also, I think that there's got to be much more communication. I think often, a speaker or a bureau will work together and transact, and they haven't sort of laid down the ground rules of how they're going to work together. And every bureau is different, and every individual in every bureau is different. Unless they have a very strict code of conduct or a strict way of working, many people are allowed to work within quite a loose structure. And so then again, it's down to the individual and how they work. I know I've got very different opinions from some of my colleagues about how I might handle the situation, and also the length of experience that you have. So yeah, I would champion transparency. I'm not sure that everybody would agree with me, though, of course. So it's a difficult one.
In the bureau world, with obviously there's associations of bureaus that that support each other and learn together. And when you hear of one of your another bureau, let's say, that's doing things which feels like it's outside of the ethical norms of your industry, what do? Do they get excluded in some way, or do you make it public, or how does it work?
And we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, I can't give you sort of a blanket answer, but we have excluded bureaus from, who have been members, who've done things that we thought, well, actually, that's not appropriate to the industry. That will damage the industry. That will damage, what we're doing. And we have excluded people, absolutely. And it's a very difficult one. But also, we do have sort of, certain standards and criteria to say, to be a member, these are the kinds of things that you need to be doing. And these are the kinds of, also the levels of business, not only the kind of way of working, but also the structures. And we have had issues in the past, sometimes with management companies and agencies, and we've grouped together to support each other and try and resolve those problems. Because again, there isn't sort of an overriding code of conduct, certainly in Europe and the UK. I know in the US there is a bit more, it's very much more rigid, and I know you've been to the IASB meetings, but it's actually a lot looser, and you don't want to stifle the industry and lose the creativity and lose that great, it's a very entrepreneurial and exciting type of business. So you don't want to stifle it and make it so, restricted by bureaucracy and you've got to do this, you've got to do that, like some businesses are. So you wouldn't want to ruin that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, because certainly a lot of bureaus will have had a very challenging year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you also think of this wider role about ethics. Every association, pretty much in the world, trade association, industry association, usually has ethics as one of its pillars, of its values. But when was the last time you went to an association event and you had a speaker talking about ethics? So it's fun. There's a disconnect there with what people put up on their, this is what we're about as an organization, these are the values that we stand for, and what actually really happens. So I think that'll be interesting, is going, because certainly millennials are pushing much harder to change things up, which is fantastic.
And it's lovely that customers have the power of choice, and they can choose who they want to work with. And actually, I think also bureaus and speakers have the power of choice to say, who should I work with, or who would I work with, which I think was your question. Listen, I've covered my questions, James. I don't know if you've got anything else you'd like to ask Alison.
No, I mean, are there, we're talking about different, I guess Maria was talking about this as well. what would you say to speakers who maybe want to exclude speaking to certain industries? So I know some speakers maybe have an issue about speaking to oil companies or companies' arms, different types of things like that. What would you suggest to maybe our speakers watching just now in terms of how they think about which industries they might want to speak to?
Well, it's essentially their call, because they've got to measure up their values to what they're hoping to achieve by making a presentation to the client. And also, it is an opportunity, because we all already mentioned that it's a chance to just kind of send a little bit of a different message in there. And I think there's an opportunity for speakers not only to be ethical, but to actually weave ethics into their speech. So if you're talking on leadership, you've got a chance to inspire the leaders in the room, the potential, the future leaders in the room, to actually do things differently. So there's a real opportunity there, but it really has to sit well with your own core values. And also as well, it's got to be motivated from the right place. So motivation, there was the famous words from John Shad, it was the chairman of the SEC, and he said many years ago, he said, well, ethics pays. But and someone else said, well, that's like enlightened self-interest. Yeah. But however, it's got to be motivated from the right place. And I think people are beginning to see that. They can see if it's just a facade. So you think, well, I'm going to be booked because businesses are looking to attract the most bright and talented millennials into their business by rethinking their ethics and how they operate. So I think honesty and integrity has got to be at the core, cool. of what you're doing.
I think this is going to be a big subject. I think this is going to be a really big subject going forward. I think it's really interesting, and you're the first ethical futurist I've ever met, so that's really wonderful.
Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. I think you're going to pop back a bit later, aren't you?
We'll bring you back just at the end. So before we kind of talk about our little kind of topic of the week, we want to maybe give a shout out to our sponsors, who's been actually the sponsor for the whole season of This Week in Events, and that is London Speaker Bureau. London Speaker Bureau are the world's only global speaker bureau. They have offices in 18 countries around the world. And if you're looking for a keynote speaker, whether speak on ethical futurism or leadership or whatever the topic is, then go to londonspeakerbureau.com and check out some of the wonderful speakers they represent.
Lovely. Well done, James. You do that so well. So what are we going to talk about next?
Well, the good and the bad 2020. What has been your...
2020 vision, looking back. I'm going to start with the bad so I can end with the good. Is that all right? Because I want to end on a good point.
Yeah.
So the bad, James, obviously, we've all had personal losses with Corona. I don't particularly want to go there because I don't want to make everybody sad. But on a personal note, on a totally selfish note, I couldn't get married. Look, I've got my engagement ring there. And I didn't get married. We were supposed to get married on the 5th of September this year, and it didn't happen. We had to cancel it. I'm going to have the dress let out several sizes. There's no way I'm ever going to get into it again, or I'm going to have to go on a massive diet. So that was personally the bad. Do you want to share your bad before I do my good, so we both end on good?
Actually, I'll let you do your good.
Good. I'll do my good. My good has been, This Week in Events. How wonderful. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, James. It's really great. But also the good has been working more with speakers, having the opportunity, have that time to focus. I split the bureau in two, and half my team continued with the bureau work, and half of us decided, let's work with speakers and really help them to, reposition, look at their work, make sure that they're able to carry on working. And it's been fantastic. We've worked with some amazing people, and I'm going to be carrying on doing that. And I can see actually there are several people here. Look at this. They are Gary, who's been on one of the programs. Thank you, Gary. It's been really wonderful. So that's been a huge highlight. And to be sponsored as well, to be doing this. How nice is that?
Beautiful.
What about you? What's your bad and your good? Let's not do the ugly. Let's just do the bad and the good.
I'm actually gonna. I was thinking about this morning, and I thought there's these kind of 3 R's that's really. I know speakers, we love doing acronyms and things like that. So, iteration. The first is what you spoke about, which is relationships. And I think that that's been for all the good. I mean, you and I, we've had a lot of fun doing this season, got to know each other, got to bring some amazing guests. I mean, you've brought in some incredible guests. So I feel that this has been a time that I've actually deepened a lot of relationships with bureau partners, with clients. And a lot of our Speakers U members as well. So that's been good. I've really enjoyed that. The second one, which has been harder, and good and bad, is the kind of resilience piece. And just to be completely frank, this has been a dumpster fire of a year. This is been a tough year for anyone that's involved in events, speaking, hospitality, music, entertainment, the arts. So I don't want to put that down. And I think it's forced us to have to become more resilient. And I think that will be useful in the future. But when you're living it and in it, it's tough. And then the final R, I would just say, which I've kind of learned to do a little bit better, is rest. Is just a little bit more self-care. So I've been going out walking every day, just because the pacing of things is so different just now, this time that we're in. And I think where we're going to go next into 2020, and this is the good news, is I genuinely think we're going to be looking at a new roaring 2020s. The same thing that happened in 1921 after the Spanish flu pandemic. Everyone thought that everyone would just want to get back to the normal, or normalcy, as our American cousins say. But actually what they found is that people wanted to just have this burst of energy, do new things. So you had jazz music come apart, and great literature and art and new ideas. And so it was this huge bursting of innovation and creativity. And I think that's what we're going to start to see. It might not be in the first half of next year, of 2021, but I think from the second half of next year, when people start to move again and travel and congregate together, I'm actually feeling very positive about that.
Oh, I'm excited. That sounds fantastic. The roaring 20s. Although you've got to be quite slim to wear those dresses. Oh, dear. I feel a diet coming on in the new year, James. I feel a diet coming on. Okay, super. Well, wow, look at that. So we've got thank you for your conversations. Thank you, Facebook user. I don't know who you are, but appreciate that. Yes, speakers need to redesign themselves personally. Fresh. Yes, super. Okay, cool. So what's next, James?
Tools of the week.
Oh my goodness, tool of the week. Oh, yes. I forgot the tool of
the week. You're using your tool of the week just now.
I'm using my tool of the week. I'm going to share my tool of the week. Let's see if I can show you. So I've got this new remote control lighting, and I'll fiddle with the lights in a minute, but I'll just show you what's clever about them. Hopefully I can do this with my camera. Let's see. So what you've got is the lights are here. They sit on my desk. That's a big light, right? And they sit on the desk here. They're attached to the desk. I've got one on each side. And what's great is, I don't know about you, but before I had these sort of like box lights that used to sit in front of my desk, and they would take a lot of space on the floor and therefore take a fair amount of office space. But these, because they're on the desk and my desk goes up and down, so my desk is the desk that goes up and down, they will go up and down with me. But with this remote control, I can also change. So if it's suddenly got a bit darker, oh, actually, that's a bit better, isn't it? I can light myself a bit better, or I can go even brighter, or I can go nuclear, or I can,
look at that. Fantastic.
So this is quite cool. So I can control them. I think I'm going to go a bit brighter, actually. There you go. That's better. So I can control.
Present for the control freak in your life.
Thank you very much. But yeah, so there's these little lights that I can, and what's wonderful, if you're recording, we've been recording some online training videos, and the lights are incredibly bright in your eyes when you're speaking. And when you're resting to look at notes, you can just turn it off and then turn it back on again when you need it. How cool is that?
That's great. And so we're going to have, what was the name of the brand of these ones? I know
gosh, I can't, it's difficult to see. They're called Switty.
We'll put it Switty.
It's on the remote. They're called Switty.
And we'll have a link there.
Cool. And they're not bad in terms of price.
They're not.
So what have you got? No. What have you got?
So my tool, maybe share the screen so people can actually see this. This was driving you and I mad. Like we wanted to bring music into our presentations and change the audio around and do different things. And it was so difficult, it felt like, to do it. So there's a great tool. It's called Loopback, and it essentially creates a virtual audio output. So I can put loads of things. And so let's say if I'm speaking or if we're doing a workshop style, we can suddenly kind of bring some background music up, add another microphone. You can bring audio in from different videos. It's just amazing little tool, and it's not expensive at all. It's a one-off purchase. And we'll put a link that is called Loopback. So expect next season, maybe we'll start bringing some music back into.
Oh, I thought you were going to demonstrate it. You're not going to demonstrate it now. Oh, that's a shame.
You're going to have to watch next season. You're going to have to come in next season. We're going to do some things with it as well.
Very good.
I've got 20 channels here to play with. I'm going to have so much fun.
Oh my goodness! I'm hoping Tom Morley's watching, because he's going to love this. So I don't know. I don't think he is, actually, because he'd love that. That's so cool. Looking forward to seeing that. Brilliant, brilliant.
We have a final surprise for everyone. So thank you everyone for watching the show this year and supporting This Week in Events. It's been an absolute joy, Maria, doing this with you. And I'm really looking forward to next season, 2021. It's going to be a better year for all of us. And before we bring on Alison back, maybe to give us a little something special to finish up the show and the season, Maria, was there anything you wanted to say?
Well, no, just to have a safe Christmas, everybody. Don't take any risks. Let's stay safe. We've worked so hard to get this far. Let's keep going, because the sooner we can get through this, the sooner we can all get together and have a big party, and I can have a bigger wedding.
So, Alison, come back and join us again.
Okay.
Over to you.
Okay, I'm just going to sing this one out for you, but it's actually quite appropriate from just what you were saying there about Christmas, but this is a very trimmed down version of this song. So, and it's also a cappella. So, here we go. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. Next year all our troubles will be out of sight. Someday soon we all will be together, if the fates allow. Until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. So have yourself a merry little Christmas now.
Yay!
Merry Christmas.
Oh, beautiful. You brought a tear to my eye. That was gorgeous. That was absolutely gorgeous. Thank you so much. What a lovely way to end our show. I'm tearful now. Thank you so much, James. It's been wonderful. I've loved it. It's been fantastic. We will be back next year. Do not panic. Alison, you rock. I agree, Greg. She absolutely rocks. Fabulous. What a talent.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks,
I'm a bit
everyone.
emotional.
Merry
Stay
Christmas.
well, everyone. Merry Christmas, everyone. Take care.
Bye bye.